And hello, my wild darlings. How are you all? Or at least those of you who have arrived more or less on time. It is 1 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, here in sunny California. And it has been sunny California the last few days. I keep going out of the house in a jacket, as is my wont in January, and wind up by the time I get to downtown or wherever I'm driving, I'm like hot, uncomfortable. It's weird. I can't say it's climate change per se because we've had warm Decembers and Januaries in the past, and we did just have a long stretch of rain and cold. Um, what can I say? Weather is weird. California weather is changeable, mild but changeable. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. But it was strange. It was strange having that feeling of sweat running down the back of one's neck. Anyway, now that I've talked about sweat and personal body discomfort, um, let me go on to say I will be here. I'm Tad, by the way, if I didn't say that already. And I will be here until approximately 2 o'clock. I will be reading more from Sleeping Late on Judgment Day tonight. Yeah, and that's like about the main thing. Just been working away all week. Spent a great deal of time, mostly on Splintered Sun, which I'm getting near to the end of. I still have a few chapters to do. I have to go back over one section where I had to change a bunch of things to make sure it all still makes sense. And it's polished because sometimes when I'm moving chunks around, I don't always have a chance to properly go back and read it as the new order says, which is crucial for understanding. Oh, sounds so pretentious to say it, but to understand that whether you what the music of that particular section is like, how the prose runs, how it all fits together, what the pacing is. So I still have some more work to do. I will be in the end in the next couple days, and then I will go back and rewrite those 4 or 5 not rewrite, but I will go back and go through those 4 or 5 chapters to make sure they all work. And what else do I have to do? Oh, I have to write a bunch of songs. That's always fun. There always seems to be one last thing I leave for myself. Back in the Otherland days, it was the chapter heads, the net feeds. In fantasy novels, it tends to be songs because it's very hard to switch from prose to thinking in terms of a correct rhyming, seemingly historically valid, in the sense of not seeming anachronistic set of lyrics to a song. So even though I may know that a song goes there at that point, I mean, obviously I know because I've set it up, doesn't mean I'm always ready to write the actual lyrics at that exact moment. So I have about 2 or 3 of those still to write. But other than that, we're almost done. Think I am going to make my end of January schedule for what I had planned. That is to be completely done with it, and minus the copy editing, which is still to come. So that's what's going on with the book. I will also be thinking more about what I'm going to do next, and I will explain that to you as I get further into the process. What else is there to talk about? Deb's fine. She's doing her stuff. Well, she's sleeping right now, as she almost always is by this time of the night. She's usually been asleep for 3 or 4 hours. She is a morning person. I am a night person. And that may be one of the reasons our marriage has been strong and long lasting, is we each have some time of the day. Because we're together all the time. We both work at home. We have been working at home together in the same room, more or less, or at least in the same house, since we first started living together in the early 1990s. So we've managed it so far, and part of it I do believe, and this is no criticism of Deb or myself, but I do believe part of it is to do with the fact that she has her time in the morning when she doesn't have to deal with me, and I have my time at night when I don't have to deal with anybody, except that I do. I have to deal with cats and dogs, but that's okay. She has dogs in the morning. I have dogs and cats in the evening. So cats are fine. You may see them trotting about hunting for treats because I threw a few treats around the room into the corners and underneath the furniture and stuff, so they have to look for them. And the dogs are doing pretty well generally. They're doing well with each other. We don't have too many fights. We do have Johnny occasionally getting territorial, and he growls a bit about certain things that irk him, which if he could talk, we know better why they irk him. But other than that, they're doing pretty well, and they sniff each other and they hang around the house together, and they don't fight or anything. I wouldn't say they're best buddies by any means, but that's okay. We have Lemon in doggy daycare. Oh God, it's like having children, and I already had children. We have Lemon in doggy daycare, and Johnny is on SSRIs. That's, anti-anxiety medication. But Johnny's been on SSRIs for years. I mean, years. He's basically on the same thing that I'm on. So I don't know if we're growing more alike. We definitely both are in the cranky old man phase. There's no question about that. We're like, just leave us alone. We don't want to go for a walk, and we don't want to do anything, and we don't want to have fun. We want to be left alone to just sit here and feel sorry for ourselves. And that's both Johnny and myself. Okay, what else am I going to do before? Oh, I was going to actually talk. Well, I'll wait and I'll check in and see who might be hanging about here. And then I will go on and explain probably stuff most of you know already, but I'll explain it again anyway. So anyway, I see Isaac is here. Checking in, one of our late night American listeners. Dirk, hello Dirk, good to see you. Kristen, another late night Yank. Chris Fobb, as always, hello, good to see you, buddy. Hazel, my mother-in-law has checked in. Hello, sweetie, good to see you. Your daughter is fine. All things given where they are in the world and all that, she's doing very well. And I send love to you and everybody in England. And Christina is here. Hello. Good to see you. Wouter, Iris, Suzanne, Owen, a pleasure. Mr. Mark Craigbaum, my old buddy. Good to see you too. Maria Jose, Mark Redmond, and Penny Davies. Those are the folks who have checked in so far. And as always, it's a pleasure to see so many familiar, I almost said faces, but I guess familiar names. I mean, I know some of you by faces, and especially I know a lot of you in either from the Bay Area or from Germany who I have met in person, some of you many times. I'm sure much to your disgust because I just don't go away. I keep coming back. Anyway, what else was I going to say? A couple of things. Oh, a brief technical note, which is that I discovered that my LED light that goes with my broadcasting setup, for lack of a better term, I may not have remembered to charge it. I usually charge it immediately after my Sunday evening reading just to make sure that it's ready next week. And I looked at it and it didn't look right, but I've been online with the manuals and I'm still not 100% certain whether it was charged or not charged because it's very dubious in terms of explaining what the little lights on the back are supposed to mean in terms of charging. So if it goes off, we've got enough ambient light from the overhead lights in here and stuff like this. You'll still be able to see me. I'll just be a little more shadowy. Maybe I'll be more interesting, possibly, more mysterious. What else was I going to say? Oh, before I start reading, I think I've said this to in many places, but I'm going to say it briefly now just because I think it's one of the interesting things about the book. And since I've got Mark and Kristen and some other folks on here who I know are familiar with this particular area where I grew up, I will mention this then, which is that when I was first thinking of the Bobby Dollar books, the initial thought was very much like spy novel. That was my first thought, was like, okay, if hell and heaven have been at war for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, whatever, however you want to quantify the folk mythology. They've been at war for a very long time. So since the world is not constantly in flames and all that, it must be a Cold War. So my initial thoughts when I was starting to write the first Bobby Dollar book, or when I was thinking about it and kind of prepping it and world building, was, oh, this should have the kind of feel of a John le Carré novel, which, for those of you who don't know John le Carré, one of the great writers of sort of spy and espionage fiction, in large part, Smiley's People and all of that stuff. Did he write Day of the Jackal too? Anyway, and the whole thing about it is about John le Carré as a writer is that his work feels very realistic. It feels very much like, this is somebody who's worked in espionage or has worked in intelligence and knows the ins and outs and how things are done and, the minutiae of the espionage profession. But as I got deeper into it, I realized that what I really wanted to do with it was more like a noir. And part of the reason was that the espionage novels tend to be third person for a variety of reasons, so that they can jump around to different viewpoints and build suspense that way. Generally, I don't know why that is, but that does seem to be the case. Whereas what I wanted, in part for my own pleasure and happiness, and in part because it felt more appropriate to the story, was more noir. That is, with the sort of protagonist who has one foot in the camp of righteousness and the other foot in the camp of not so righteousness, largely because he has his own moral code. This is the classic noir protagonist, right? The Raymond Chandler, the Sam Spade, that in Raymond Chandler's case, the Philip Marlowe is the name of the character, and Dashiell Hammett's detective is named Sam Spade, and there have been several others. But basically, the whole thing about the noir is that it's usually a single character. He's usually the kind of tarnished knight, K-N-I-G-H-T, kind of a tarnished knight. In other words, somebody who's gone through some tough times and has lost some of his, or her, depending, childlike belief in society and all that, and is definitely usually pretty cynical and experienced and has been through a lot, which has also helped to cultivate that cynicism. And so that's one thing. You need that. It's first person. It's narrated by a character who is trying to do right, but is frequently stifled or interfered with by the forces that he is supposedly helping, corrupt cops, et cetera, corrupt politicians. And the last thing is that noir is fundamentally an urban form of fiction. Most noir takes place in cities. That is because, first of all, you need that canvas, I guess, for lack of a better words. You need that large amount of people and that large difficulty of finding anybody or anything in a metropolis. And also the idea that there's so much unknown. Very different from the more rural kinds of horror or crime fiction. It's very much, it's not about like, oh, it's a small town and everybody has a suspicion, blah, blah, blah. No, it's like you're in the midst of this metropolis and something happened and you have to figure it out and you have to rely on your own wits, and you have to narrow it down through a great deal of exploration and detection and things like that. So those things were all there, and I felt like that's how I wanted to write the Bobby Dollar books. But there was one problem with that, and this is what I started this whole thing to explain. There was one problem with that idea, which was that I needed an urban area. Now, I mentioned Dashiell Hammett. I mentioned God, I'm going blank on my names. The Philip Marlowe character, the Sam Spade character. Sam Spade and Dashiell Hammett's territory was San Francisco, as anybody knows who's seen The Maltese Falcon or whatever. And the character Philip Marlowe is basically, that's LA is his turf. Los Angeles in the 40s and early 50s, as I recall, maybe even slightly earlier. But anyway, so that's that territory. So I didn't feel, first of all, I wanted to go anywhere near either of those because then it turns it into a pastiche of somebody else's work. But the problem was that what I knew, the cities that I knew London a bit from having lived there, and I knew San Francisco and LA from having spent a lot of time in both. Didn't feel qualified to write a London noir for a lot of reasons. So my final decision, what it came down to was like, I need a city where this can happen. But because I had gone for not only noir, but noir fantasy, I went, why not just make a city? Why not make a city? And so I constructed San Judas out of elements and places that already existed when I was growing up. So the area that San Judas covers is largely the area in which I lived the first 25 years of my life, which is all suburbs and, the area around Stanford University. And as a result, I was able to take things that were real in the real world, like Stanford University, and give them a twist into dark noir kind of territory. And I was able to have a city where my character could do all those urban noir things without having to poach on either on Dashiell Hammett's territory or God, why am I just absolutely here just blanking out on something I just said a little while ago? On Philip Marlowe territory. I've just gone completely blank on the name. This is not due to my advancing age. This is due to this time of the night and not having enough caffeine, because if I have too much caffeine, I don't sleep. So anyway, so that was my decision. And so in a sense, it's slightly unfortunate, because although I know lots of people have read these books and enjoyed them, they are particularly pointed exercises for people who have grown up in my area, who know Palo Alto, Redwood City, San Carlos, San Mateo, Santa Cruz, all these places around where I live and where I grew up. And I actually, some of my reader friends actually, one of the times that several of them came over from Europe, they actually did a tour of Bobby Dollar locations, which I thought was extremely cool. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that, because there's still people who actually say, I never heard of San Judas. No, you haven't. It doesn't exist. I took San Jose down at the far end of the bay out of the equation, basically blew it up. Sorry, San Jose. Perfectly nice city. Nothing, no harm meant, no cruelty intended. I just needed it to go away so I could have so I would have my own invented city be the third part of the Bay Area Metroplex, which is San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose. And that's it. That's basically all I wanted to explain, just for those who might be interested or who might wonder why I chose to invent a city out of nowhere. And of course, as is mentioned in the books, San Judas is named after San Judas Tadeo, who is in fact the patron saint of hopeless causes, which seemed perfect for what I wanted. So, and is a real saint, obviously, Saint Jude, as he's often called. Anyway, okay, so on with the story. If I have checked, if I said hello to everybody that needed to be said hello to. Oh, and there's Jeremy Ehrman dropping in, and my sister-in-law Lisa. Hello, sweetie. Good to see you too. Hello. Lots of love. Mwah. Anyway, I am going to start reading. Why am I still having trouble remembering the guy who wrote the Philip Marlowe novels? Raymond, and then I keep thinking Raymond Carver, who's another famous American writer. It doesn't matter. You don't have to tell me. It'll come to me suddenly, and I will probably shout it out in the middle of a book, in the middle of reading the book here. Okay, so we are reading Bobby Dollar. Currently, what is happening is Bobby, of course, has been to hell, got tricked by Eligor, his archenemy, was not able to free Kaz, who is still in hell, his beloved. And then more recently, he has discovered that his apartment seems to be haunted. There are all kinds of weird things happening there. Most recently, he thought he saw a couple of young guys following him around downtown while he was running errands. And when he got back to his apartment, he found these two strangers there. And he had just been about to beat them both up, and somebody hit him. Some unknown party hit him on the back of the head and knocked him out cold. And that is where we ended on the last chapter. So chapter 6 of Sleeping Late on Judgment Day, Black Sun. You can tell it's not a good day when you get cold cocked and then you regain consciousness and they're still hitting you. Two guys had my arms, one on either side of me. I couldn't see them very well through the blood running down into my eyes, but I was pretty sure it was the two missionaries because the guy in the black t-shirt currently punching my face was a new player in the game. He was a muscular, bald-headed thug, a little shorter than me, with forearms like premium hams. Unlike the other two, he seemed like someone who hit people for money. Instead of just beating my face into hamburger, he was working the body as well, softening up my ribs, well, turning them into the bottom of a snack bag to be precise, and then going back to the head every now and then, just when I started to be able to think straight. He'd already opened cuts above my eyes, judging by all the blood, and my nose cartilage definitely felt bendy and wrong. He paused when he saw me looking at him. Okay, now we can get down to business. Bald thug looked like he might be local muscle. I couldn't swear to it, but I thought I might even have seen him in Oyster Bill's once or twice on the ass end of a Saturday night. He finished up with one last solid punch into my breadbasket, doubling me up. How am I supposed to talk? I grunted, trying not to puke Javanese food all over my shoes. Shit, I don't care whether you talk, said B-Thug. Just point. Where is it? Man, I was getting tired of that question. I'd gone through a long stretch earlier in the year of being asked that by an animated corpse with a long knife. That had been about the feather. Since Eligor had taken the feather back, I was pretty sure this was about the horn. That worried me almost more than the beating because there was no way anyone should know already that I was looking for it. So I played dumb. Where's what? He hit me again. A quick straight right that split my lip and sent a generous dribble of blood down the front of my shirt. Don't bullshit me. Where's the thing? Some important people want to know. Now. Whatever it is, I don't have it. An open-handed shot from his left rocked me back. I couldn't help wondering where my gun was. I dropped it when I first got hit, and I couldn't see it anywhere. Who were these people? Why did they want Eligor's horn, if I was right about what they were hunting? And why did they think I had it? I was pretty certain they were all human, which meant they might be uninformed enough to think I was really holding out on them, and that was a scary thought. The young guys on either side of me, although hanging on to my arms with grim determination, didn't look or act like pros, but Bald Thug definitely seemed capable of killing me, or at least killing this particular body. I really hate dying at the best of times, and at the moment I wasn't absolutely certain that my bosses would give me a new body afterward. I let myself go slack so that the two guys holding me had to pull harder to keep me upright. While I pretended a moment's grogginess, even more believable if they didn't know I was angel strong because their muscle guy had absolutely knocked the crap out of me, I glanced at their positions on either side. As I did, I couldn't help noticing that one of the missionary boys had an unusual tattoo on his wrist. I couldn't make out the whole thing, but it was enough to catch my attention. Then, as they set themselves to haul me up straight again, I smashed my foot down on the instep of the guy on my right, then back-kicked the other guy in the shin. Then back-kicked the other guy in the shin. Even as they both let go, howling in pain, I lunged forward and rammed my head right into Bald Thug's gut. I drove him backward, doing my best to knee his face as he fell. I didn't catch him solid anywhere, but I knocked the breath out of him long enough to throw myself onto the floor. I scrambled to the couch as fast as I could because I could already hear B-Thug climbing to his feet behind me. If I'd been planning to make a run for it, I wouldn't have made it. I wasn't, though. I was just trying to get to my sofa gun. What? You don't have a sofa gun? I thought everyone did. I kept mine under the cushions where they came together in the middle, a place nobody ever sat, mostly because I never had any visitors. It was my good old S&W 5-shot revolver, a piece I'd semi-retired. It was about as reliable a gun as you can find, excellent for stashing in a couch against a sudden need. I yanked it out, rolled, and there was Bald Thug still a couple of feet away, stock still now and staring at the muzzle that I was pointing between his eyes. "Down on your knees," I told him. "Hands behind your head. Yeah, you've been here before, haven't you?" I moved back a little so I could keep all three of them under the gun, but I kept talking to the pro. "I'm not going to punch you just because you punched me, Slappy. I'm not the vengeful type. But if you or either of your buddies move, I'll immediately blow the whole middle part out of your face and then figure things out from there. Clear?" Thug nodded, hands still behind his head, so it looked like he was doing yoga or something. Good. I stared at him for a long second or two, then turned to his partners. "Okay, boys, pull up those sleeves. I want to see what's on your wrists." "No, the other wrist, shithead." As I suspected, they both had the tattoo, which I could now see in full. And here, just to be full service, I'm going to try and show it to you. I have no idea if you can see that or not. Let me... Whoops. No, of course you can't. And can we get it off the screen? No, it doesn't want to come off the screen either. Oh well, you'll have to go look it up. Anyway, it's known as the sun wheel, the Sonnenrad, but we'll find that out later. As I suspected, they both had the tattoo, which I could now see in full. "What the hell does that stand for?" I asked. Neither of them would meet my eye. "I strongly suggest somebody tells me what's going on and who you three are before I get any more irritated." Strangely, it wasn't just the muscular pro who looked like he was going to keep his mouth shut, but both missionaries, too. I turned to the one on my right. "Hey, I could shoot you in the balls. That might loosen you up a bit, unless you're extra brave." I swiveled the gun to the other missionary. "Or I could shoot you both in the gut, and you could watch each other bleed to death all the time, thinking how much easier it would have been just to answer my questions. Especially after you broke into my place and painted a fucking swastika on my wall, then beat the shit out of me." But I noticed there was nothing on the wall now, as if my hallucination of it running away had been real. "Where did it go anyway? Did you wipe it off?" Weirdly, both the younger guys only looked more frightened when I mentioned this. The muscular bald guy just shook his head. "They're not going to talk," he said. "They're crazy. And you don't have the stones to get anything out of me." I walked to the nearest missionary, the dark-haired one, and put the snout of my .38 up next to his eyeball. He was clearly nervous, but held his water pretty well. "Is that true, kid? You'd really take a bullet instead of just having a friendly chat?" He only set his jaw. I was beginning to wonder what I was going to do with them. I couldn't be sure one of them didn't have a gun. Shit, they probably all had guns, so I didn't know how long before one of them did something dramatic and the serious shooting began. Not that things would go all that easy, even if they were all unarmed. The dark-haired guy up close may not have been the sort of mayhem machine that Bald Thug was, but he and his blonde partner both looked pretty fit, and they certainly weren't panicking. They were both clean-shaven and had similar haircuts, trimmed high on the neck and sides, leaving nothing around their ears or the back of their heads but precise stubble. They looked military, but if so, they must have been from the northern Finnish irregulars or something, because they didn't have a square inch of tan between them. The pair looked like fanatics. And that was the problem. The more I watched them, the more I got the sense they weren't going to tell me anything useful until the pain got very intense. After spending a long stretch in hell, I wasn't sure I wanted to do that, even to these deserving shit stains. But what else could I do? Just shoot them? Yeah, and then have every cop. Where did it go? I just lost it, sorry. But what else could I do? Just shoot them? Yeah, and then have to get rid of 3 bodies in downtown St. Jude. I could have called the cops, but these guys weren't ordinary criminals, and I might attract more attention than I wanted if I tried to have them arrested for burglary. Maybe I could have called the compasses to see if anyone there wanted to help me find out who these guys were, but at the moment I was even less willing to share my private business with my coworkers than with the police. The more I thought about it, the more I could see only one practical solution. While I still had the gun next to his eye, I quickly pat-searched the dark-haired guy, whom I decided to call Timon, and then did the same to his fair-haired partner, Pumbaa. To my surprise, neither had a gun or any other weapons to speak of, although one had a can of pepper spray in his pocket. I impounded it, then gestured the 2 of them toward the front door. Go, and just keep going. Get the fuck out of my place. I'm going to have a little chat here with your friend. I waved the gun toward Bald Thug, who was watching with the cold, calculating eye of an ambushed predator. When I'm done, there won't be much left to him, so don't bother hanging around. And if I see either of you again, ever, I won't waste time with another of these informative chats. I'll just blow your brains out. Timon and Pumbaa both looked at me, then at each other. It was obvious what they were thinking. Yeah, you could try it, I told them. But I promise I'll blow at least one sucking hole in each of you before you get near me. You may be some kind of fanatics, but no matter what you think, you're not superheroes. You go anywhere other than out that door, and you'll be carrying your intestines with you. They didn't turn fast enough for me, so I pepper sprayed them both lightly in the face and shoved them out the door with my foot as they gagged and gasped. As I turned my attention back to Bald Thug, I heard them stumbling in the hall and then clattering down the stairwell, still choking and cursing. B-Thug stared at me as the noise of their exit slowly died away. He shook his head. Big play. But you're not going to get anything more out of me, so you might as well just shoot. Look, chummy, I let them go because you're right. They're obviously crazy. The kind who'd rather be martyrs. But you're not. I stepped a little closer, still not getting too near him. I never let my gun waver from the center of his torso. The .38 was loaded with some of my gunsmith friend Orban's special hand loads, good for a close-up weapon with a short barrel. They'd make a mess of him if he tried to jump me. I'm betting you're just earning some money. You're a pro. You got no loyalty to those guys. He actually smiled. It was weird to see, since it obviously didn't mean the same thing as when an ordinary person smiled. Don't lecture me. You don't know shit about me or about them. His mouth twisted. You have no fucking idea who they work for or what those people can do. They are into some totally sick shit, and it's all real. I would rather have you shoot me any day than have them come after me for talking out of school. At that moment, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. When the door suddenly opened, I was already turning toward it, certain that the Happiness twins had nerved themselves to come back and try again. Sam stood in the open doorway, confusion on his big familiar face, waving his hand vigorously to fan away the last of the pepper spray. Hey, B, my eyes are burning, was all he had time to say. Then Bald Thug swept my legs right out from under me with some kind of kick, dropped me on my ass like it was the first day of karate practice. Then he was up and running. He hit Sam like a fullback on a dive play, and even though my buddy was taller and at least the same weight, he was staggered by the sudden impact and fell back into the hallway. B-Thug was out the door past him and down the hall while Sam was still trying to pull his gun. And although I got up and made the doorway a second or so later, B Thug was already in the stairwell, so I had to let him go. If I missed him, I might wind up putting a bullet into one of my neighbors' apartments, or even into one of my actual neighbors. Not that they were going to be my neighbors much longer. I felt pretty sure some tenant must have called the police by now. Even in this part of Jude, indoor gunshots were unusual. Sorry, Temuel, but it looked like I was about to be driven out of another shitty apartment by work-related mayhem, whether the folk upstairs liked it or not. What the genuine fuck, said Sam. He grabbed me and kept me from collapsing. I seemed to be dribbling blood everywhere. Oh, yeah. I paused to listen. Our bald thug was not a small man, and I could hear him caroming down the stairs like a 250-pound pachinko ball. Yeah, you definitely took the words right out of my mouth, Sammy boy. Sam opened the windows to ease the lingering sting of the pepper spray, then kindly filled a towel with some ice for me. Since I didn't have a towel big enough to cover all the bruised areas, I concentrated on my face. While I lay on the couch, revolver still in hand, in case any of my new friends came back, Sam scavenged the pantry for something non-alcoholic to drink and finally found one of the warm cans of Werner's that I kept around just for him. When he popped the tab, tiny little bubbles flew out of the hole like angry wasps. Sam took a long swig. Ah, he said, the Scotch bonnet pepper of ginger ales. Nice fit with your new air freshener. He pulled up a chair beside the couch and handed me my Belgian-made .45. Found it on the kitchen floor. Somebody probably kicked it out of the way. I gave him a quick rundown on what had just happened, along with the rest of the recent news, including the spook train ride I'd been on, even before I'd found B-Thug and friends in my apartment, scratchings and spiders and disembodied monkey paws. Which reminds me, I said as I finished, I didn't want to come off all suspicious with my only real friend, but the timing of his arrival had been strange. What the hell are you doing here? I was in town, since I missed the lunch. He got distracted by the design of the missionaries' tattoos that I'd scrawled on the back of a Chinese delivery menu, so I wouldn't forget. This is the ink they had, huh? Never seen it. Looks kind of Eastern? Indian, maybe. Yeah, but they sound like local junior college students, and they were dressed like the kind of guys who travel in black helicopters. You always meet the most interesting people, B. Then they try to kill you. Sam frowned at the drawing. We should look this up online. If I knew what it was called, I would. But since I don't, I have other ways to get information. I took a picture of the drawing and emailed it to my friend George, a.k.a. Fatback, researcher par excellence. Shit, I said, catching a glimpse of the clock. He won't even be human for hours. Don't be a hater. You and I haven't been human for years. You know what I mean. My main researcher happens to be a werehog, which isn't all that common, whatever some single women may tell you. While he has pig brain, he's not going to be able to do anything. We can wait. What were you planning to do this evening anyway, sport? Your face looks like ground beef, and from the way you're breathing, you got a couple of cracked ribs, too. I recommend you settle back, hold that ice against the meatloaf on the front of your head, and let me bring in something to eat. He held up the menu with the tattoo scrawl. How about Happy Buddha? I just had Asian food, I said. I felt my jaw and groaned. But you get what you want. I think it's going to be nothing but broth for me until at least tomorrow. At about 11, I realized I couldn't remember a single thing Sam had said in the last half an hour. I needed to crash so badly I couldn't hold my head up. I told Sam he didn't have to watch me all night. Nah, I'm staying. What if those assholes come back, B? Fine, I said, but I'm not moving off this couch because all my bones are broken. You can sleep on my bed. He got up to examine the tangle of not washed lately sheets. Never mind, I'll sleep in my car downstairs. Don't be such a pussy. Just pull that stuff off and get my sleeping bag out of the closet. Or there's even some clean sheets and blankets in there, I think. Actually, I wasn't too sure of that at all. Yeah, I'll take the sleeping bag. Can't be any worse than some of the places I've slept. He leaned in through the bedroom doorway and called out, Don't take that as a challenge, you weird organisms that live here in Bobby's filthy room. Fuck you, Sammy. I sank back into the couch and pulled the blankets up, but I wasn't ready to relax. I really wanted a drink, but I wasn't going to ask my teetotal buddy to pour it for me, even though he would have. I got up and staggered across to the cabinet where the vodka bottle was and brought it back to the couch. Don't wake me for anything short of Judgment Day. But I didn't get to sleep anywhere near that long. Sometime between 11 and midnight, my phone rang. Hi, Mr. Dollar. It's me, Edie. You said to call. I hope it's not too late. By now, my entire skull felt like a flower pot that had been dropped from a third-story balcony, so I just said, No, it's fine. Okay, that's good. Dr. Gustavus says he'll talk to you. Who? I wasn't entirely awake. Dr. Gustavus? You know, the guy I was working for at Islanders Hall? He says he'll talk to you if you want, at his house. I'll give you the directions if you have a pen. Sam was snoring contentedly in my room, so I got up and walked my throbbing head around until I found something to write with. Shoot. When Edie had finished and hung up, I stared blearily at the scrap of paper to be sure it made some kind of sense. Then I put it in my wallet and slid back into dreams of marching columns of Disney cartoon characters who each stopped to punch me in the head before goose-stepping past. There were a lot of them. Man, that was a long night. Chapter 7, World's Edge. The phone woke me again about 4:45. It was a client. Well, to be more precise, it was Alice informing me I had a client. Alice has been working for the main office as long as I've been an angel. She's efficient, in an at least the trains run on time sort of way, but she has a voice that could strip paint and the personality of an itchy Komodo dragon. Choosing her to be our dispatcher, like the Hallelujah chorus ringtone, shows that somebody in the heavenly hierarchy has a third-grade sense of humor. Don't you ever sleep? I asked her. Can't. I lay awake feeling bad about having to wake up hungover bums like you. See? The milk of angelic kindness positively drips from that woman. Sam was asleep on top of my bed, sprawled like an elephant seal on the sand and making similar noises. I took a quick shower, doing my best not to scream when the soap got into all the scrapes and cuts, then rang my friend Fatback to see if anything was happening on the research front. Morning, Mr. D. He sounded quite cheery for a man who was going to turn back into a brainless beast in a man's body at any moment. I'm just sending out that stuff you asked about. Thanks, George. Anything interesting? Nothing out of your normal range of weirdness. That design's called the Sonnenrad, the Sun Wheel. It's always been big with racial pride groups in Europe, but the occult boys in Hitler's SS picked it up too, and it's associated with some of their black rituals. That means modern neo-Nazis love it, of course, and there's a pretty nasty group these days named the Black Sun Faction. Black Sun is another name for that Sonnenrad design. I can't find much about them, but they look spooky. Cool. I'll read it all through when I get a chance. Bill me? Yeah? Don't worry, I already did. I'm saving up to get this new Swedish eye tracking software. My voice control stuff is too old and slow, and it makes too many mistakes. Just to clear up any confusion, George Noseda, at least the George I talked to, has problems using a keyboard because he doesn't have hands. He has trotters. That's because he's a pig. Pig with a man's brain by night, man with a pig's brain by day. Pretty much the shittiest kind of werepig you could be. The reason why is a long story, but basically he got hosed by hell. Hope it works out for you, buddy. Very kind. Oh, sorry, I read that one wrong. Hope it works out for you, buddy. Very kind, Mr. B. I better get off the phone. The sky is getting light. Vaya con Dios. You too, man. And I meant it. I wouldn't have wished George's curse even on Donald Trump, and George is a really nice guy. The client I'd been called to argue for was a nice old lady named Eileen Cheney, who had just died in Sequoia General an hour before I got there. When I stepped outside, she was patiently waiting for me and seemed completely unsurprised by any of what was going on, except that I didn't have wings. Haven't earned them yet, I said, which might not have been the exact truth, but was at least simple. I'm sure you will, young man. She took my hand and gave it a squeeze. You have a nice face. Okay, so death hadn't improved her vision, but I still resolved to do my best for her. Turns out there wasn't much to do. Mrs. Cheney had nothing shocking in her background. Hell's prosecutor was comparatively new and only offered the most perfunctory case against her, and so the whole thing was over in what felt like half an hour. When Mrs. Cheney and the judge disappeared, I was left alone with the prosecutor for a moment. Except for the whites of his eyes, this demon, who went by the charming moniker Shit Squelch, looked like a statue carved out of a giant peeled purple grape. He stared at me with unhidden interest. I've heard about you, Delorio, he said. Yeah, people get bored. My name comes up. Seriously, some of the folks on my side really don't like you. Like, they've got plans. If I were you, I'd get into a different line of work. If you were me, your friends would have killed you a long time ago, I said. While he was puzzling that out, I split. I was afraid he might ask me for my autograph or something. It was about 7:30 in the morning when I got back to the apartment house. An ugly time of the day for any sane person, but especially for someone with as many sore parts as I had. I parked across the street and looked around carefully before leaving the car. In the building lobby, I ran into some neighbors, 2 young women who lived down the hall. We'd seen each other a few times, but never spoken. I thought they were probably a couple because I only ever saw them together. One was tall and lithe and dark, the other only a little shorter, red-haired, and impressively muscular without being particularly big. They were dressed to go out running. I stepped aside to let them by, and the redhead stared at my face. Oh, je вам в garage? She said. Sounded like Russian. Are you quite right? I assumed she meant, are you all right? I'm okay, thanks. I was mugged. Bozhe me. She said something else that I couldn't understand to her dark-haired friend, who shook her head gravely. They walked past me with sympathetic looks on their faces. Take careful, the tall, dark one told me as they went out. She, too, was pretty obviously another non-native speaker. Sam was gone, off to save the world or buy more ginger ale. I was on my own. I tried to catch up on a little sleep, but I was too wired to relax. Not to mention my ribs and skull felt like they'd been run through an industrial stamping press, so I got up again, swallowed about 11 ibuprofen, and checked out the directions Edie Parmenter had given me the night before. Her employer, this Dr. Gustavus, lived a good distance out of the city, over on the coast side of the hills, but I didn't mind a little thinking time. As I headed toward the freeway on-ramp, I called Alice and asked her to take me out of rotation for a couple of hours while I handled some personal business. You can call it what you want, she said. Me, I'd just be honest and say, staying home to watch game shows and jerk off, but I'll pretend if you want. It's a complete mystery to me why people so often use the words vicious bitch to describe you, Alice. She hung up before I'd finished being rude. I hate that. I do like driving, especially when I don't have to worry about a call from work. I followed the Woodside Expressway up and over the hills toward the Pacific, rising from oak scrub to redwood forest. When the sun got high enough, it burned off some of the morning mist. It was not what you'd call a gorgeous November day, at least by Northern California standards, but it was nice enough. This time of year, the golden light we get in October turns a bit brassy, and it's almost silver by December. Today it was still on the buttery side, but there was a distinct nip of winter in the air, that cold twinge of mortality even an angel can feel, the chill that can make you shiver even in direct sun. As I slalomed through the hills, I took inventory. Anaita had made some deal with Eligor, and, as best I could tell, they had exchanged feather and horn to seal the bargain. Eligor had lost the feather for a while, but now he had it back, thanks to me, Barnum's favorite angel. I call myself that because apparently there's a sucker born every minute, even in the afterlife, and I'm the after-living proof. The horn, however, the other marker of the bargain, was still hidden. And now, to add to the fun, some neo-Nazis and local criminal scum had apparently banded together to find the horn, reasons unknown, as well as work in a few beatings for me when their busy schedules allowed. I had no idea how these guys fit into things, but lots of folks had been interested in the feather when I had pretended I was going to sell it. It was possible some of the bidders at the big feather auction had been fronts for the Black Sun or were connected to them in some other way. I hoped Edie's employer could tell me more about those organizations than just their names, which was why I was driving all the way out to the coast. If I didn't get anything useful out of this Gustavus, I'd be back to square one again. And I didn't have anything in square one except empty space. As I crested the hills, the fog began to turn into drizzle. I put on the wipers and turned up the CD player, one of the few additions I'd made to the extremely old Japanese car I was driving. Charlie Patton's blues took me through the rain and back into the light as I reached the shining, wet expanse of Highway 1 on the far side of the mountains, where I headed north. The sky was streaked with clouds, although blue was trying to push through. The ocean itself was steely gray, and there must have been some decent surf because I saw cars parked in several places along the shoulder and people in wetsuits heading down to the shore with boards. Edie's directions said, "Before you get to Half Moon Bay, turn left at the Flying Horse." I wished I'd double-checked with her before leaving because she hadn't specified whether this marvel was a street, a restaurant, or an actual horse with wings. As I got close to Half Moon Bay, I slowed down a little. Luckily, it was only a bit past noon because the visibility gets really bad later in the afternoon as the sun drops toward the ocean and shines straight into your eyes. I passed a few restaurants and bars with picturesque names, but none of them were anything to do with horses, feathered or otherwise. I was just a few miles south of the golf course and thinking seriously about turning around when I passed out of the latest sprinkle of rain. As wipers swept the last drops from my windshield, I saw it. It really was a flying horse. Not, I hasten to say, a live one, but one of those old gas station signs. Although in this case you couldn't see anything but the red Pegasus, and not much of that because it was leaning against a tree about 10 yards off the highway, half covered with underbrush. I couldn't help wondering why nobody had snatched it and sold it to some collector. Highway 1, or at least that section, was still a pretty basic old road. You didn't need to wait until the next exit to get off. I turned in front of the rusting horse and onto a dirt road that I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. Really not much more than a two-wheel track. I followed its curving course in the general direction of the Pacific, which sprawled across most of the horizon, except for the spit of land I was navigating. I wound through a stand of very old eucalyptus trees. The scent that wafted through my open windows was like the world's largest cough drop. Then the road climbed, and I could see that I was approaching the top of the promontory, which was all evergreens, pines, and cypresses tangled together. Which was all evergreens, pines, and cypresses tangled together. There was no sign of a house. But when I got to the edge of the promontory, I found that the road didn't end there. Instead, it narrowed even more and wound down the front of the tree-covered bluff. After following a bend and finding myself looking down a steep sandstone cliff to the ocean and white frothing rocks below my passenger side door, I finally saw the house, tucked into the hill just to my left and facing water. The building didn't seem strange at first, just a large 3-story white house with a high A-frame roof pressed back into the hillside, totally hidden from the highway by the trees. But as I got closer, I saw that there were quite a few other buildings on the property, including a group of perhaps a dozen smaller houses, cabins, really, set out in straight lines on a level further down the hill. I parked on the gravel drive. No other cars, which I hope didn't mean this Gustavus guy had decided to run down to Pescadero for a crate of artichokes or something, and I was going to have to come back another day. It was cold by the front door, with nothing between me and the late autumn wind off the Pacific, so after I banged the heavy iron knocker, I pulled up my jacket collar while I waited. I was beginning to wonder if I had been right about the emergency artichoke safari when somebody finally opened the door. It was a woman, 200 years old if she was a day, wearing a long tent-like black dress like a mourner at a Ren Fair funeral. Her black headgear was flat on the top, with a veil hanging down all around that left only her face visible. She looked at me as though she didn't meet many actual people. "I'm here to see Dr. Gustavus. My name is Bobby Dollar." She nodded. That took so long, I thought halfway through I was going to have to oil her, like the Tin Woodman. "Come with me," she said, then turned and shuffled away. Another one with an Eastern European accent. Was this act out your favorite Hammer horror movie week or something? Had I missed an announcement? We went through a short hall, and the old babe in black knocked and opened a door before stepping aside to let me enter. The room was really something. Not architecturally or anything. It was a big old plain barn of a place on the inside and looked like the last serious work done to it had been a century ago. But because of the books. I'd never seen anything quite like it. All through the main room, which must have been a good 40 or 50 feet long and more than half that wide, and whose ceiling was clearly the second floor ceiling in the rest of the house, shelves lined the walls almost to the very top. A huge variety of makeshift ladders stood against the shelves, some nice ones with wheels that had been built to go with the shelves, others crude products that looked like they'd been thrown together for dunking suspected witches. At the center of the room stood a huge refectory table, also covered in books, and various other surfaces had been similarly buried. The few spaces not covered by books were crammed with other things. Bones, jars, painted stones. Except for the obvious fact that some of the volumes were extremely old, the whole place looked like a second-rate museum had staggered in here and thrown up. At the far end of the room, in front of a modest fire burning in a fireplace as big as my bedroom, the kind of fireplace you cooked whole cows in and then fed them to your knights and squires, stood a figure dressed in what I thought at first was a white lab coat, but which on closer inspection was some kind of vaguely Eastern guru thing, all loose-fitting linen. A figure that I could only presume was Dr. Gustavus? Hi, I'm Bobby Dollar. Edie Parmenter told you I was coming, I think. He carefully marked his place before he set the heavy book down, giving me time to look him over. Gustavus was certainly one of the more interesting people I'd seen lately. Outside of hell, of course, where they play a high-stakes version of interesting. He was tall and slender, and, speaking of Hammer horror, he looked a bit like a middle-aged Christopher Lee, with bone structure for days. His long white hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and he had a tiny tuft of white beard on his chin. He looked past me to the doorway where the old woman was still waiting and said, "Thank you, sister," in a voice like a veteran actor, all stretched vowels and precise consonants. "Sister?" I asked. "Your sister?" Because she looked too old to be his grandmother, let alone his sister. He showed me a wintry smile. "No, Sister Philothea is a nun. Was a nun. It's complicated. For all of them." He followed up this confusing explanation by extending a long, pale hand. "I am Dr. Carl Gustavus, and you are Deloria. I've been waiting a long time to meet you." It was a full second and a half before what he'd said hit me. But when it did, it was as though Bald Thug had just slugged me in the breadbasket again. "Delorio? I'm sorry, but my name is Bobby Dollar." "Yes, Mr. Dollar, I know." He still wore that little half smile, but his eyes seemed cold and remote as stars in the night sky. "But I know your other name, too. And I suspect I know why you're here as well. You've been having a little trouble with the folks in heaven lately, haven't you? A little unpleasantness." The smile winked off. "Or, knowing some of the players, at least a bit, I'm guessing it's rather a lot of unpleasantness." I couldn't think of a single thing to say, and that doesn't happen to me much. So I grabbed for my gun. And that's where we're going to stop, because it is 2:01. And here, let me just put the bookmark on there. All right, very good. Well, the light lasted, and that's a good thing. Now I can charge it up and make sure that for the 7 p.m. reading that I am fully illuminated. Not that I wasn't now. And in fact, probably not as most people would wish. I don't want to look at my face all the time. I'm really impressed that some of you have the fortitude to do that. Anyway, so with that, I am going to wrap up for the night. As always, I thank you very much for joining me. It's a great pleasure to spend time with you, even though I can't actually see you, but I know you're there. And that's what matters, because otherwise I'd just be a crazy person talking to myself downstairs in the office at night. Anyway, so take good care of yourselves. Very important. And as you're taking good care of yourself, make sure to take good care of your friends and loved ones, and keep an eye open for anybody else who might need a kind word or a little help with something. Return your shopping carts. Be a good citizen. And I, again, thank you for joining me, and I will now say good night and peace, and I'll be back at 7 p.m. to read more of Bobby Dollar's adventures on the coast of California. See you then. Ciao, bambini.